For those who play Pokemon, you definitely know Cubone, and even for those who don't watch it or even play it, they probably also have heard of Cubone. In my opinion, he was one of the coolest original generation Pokemon. He was known as the lonely Pokemon, who would don a skull in his head and beat the hell out of his opponents with a bone. In the original animated Pokemon series, Cubone would make his first appearance, and even then he was linked to a pretty sad backstory. But his origins actually go deeper than that and get a lot more tragic. So today we're going to look at the painful story of Cubone. But be prepared, because after you watch this video you might be a little sad, and you probably will never look at Cubone the same. Cubone is a ground type, and is labeled as a lonely Pokemon. He has a height of around 1.5 feet and a weight up to 20 pounds. Cubone takes reduced damage from poison, rock, and electric type moves, but has a weakness to grass, ice, and water. Cubone is a strong addition to the team, and evolves into Marowak starting at level 28. Now stats aside, I just think Cubone looks really awesome, and I personally seek him out in every Pokemon adventure I find myself in. To understand Cubone's origins, we first have to look at another world-famous Pokemon, Charmander. He also appeared in the original animated series, and became known as the fire lizard that beat the hell out of everything when he eventually evolved into Charizard. And kids, when a Mama Charizard and a Daddy Charizard fall in love, they decide to make an egg, and in that egg is a Charmander. But unlike most other reptiles, the parenting doesn't end here for the Charizards. Steeped with maternal instincts, the mother Charizard will stick around even after the egg hatches to take care of her young. So the legend tells that when a Charmander reaches the right age, the mother Charizard will actually light a fire on the end of its tail. This fire is the Charmander's life source at that point, so if the fire is to go out, then the Charmander itself will die. Prior to the flame being lit, the Charmander would purely be a ground-type Pokemon. It's only with the help of his mother Charizard will the Charmander actually become a fire type. And at this point you might be thinking, if this video is about Cubone, why the hell are we going so in-depth about the legend and the dichotomy of Charmanders and Charizards? Well, I'm about to explain that, and this is where the story gets really sad. Now sometimes a tragic event will take place, where the mother Charizard will die before it ever gets a chance to light the Charmander's tail. Now when this happens, not only is Charmander now an orphan, but they are also now only ground-type Pokemon. For days or even weeks, the lonely Charmander will lay with his deceased mother, waiting for her to return and finally light the flame on his tail. But eventually the Charmander realizes she's not coming back, and sets on a lonely journey by itself to try to find a way to become what it needs to. But first, the Charmander will take something. The skull of his mother Charizard and one of her bones, like a remembrance of what could have been. In the painful loss of a Charmander, a Cubone is born. And I know it all sounds like theories, and for me it just was, until you actually start looking at the facts based around Cubone and Charmander. One of the biggest things for me was the skull that the Cubone wears. It's the exact shape and size of a Charizard's skull. I mean, it makes more sense that the Cubone would wear a skull that means something, versus finding a random dead Charizard and taking its head. Another instance is that the Cubone is labeled as the lonely Pokemon in the Pokédex. The Cubone is always searching for something, most likely because it has nothing. The Cubone is also a ground-type Pokemon, which is exactly what the Charmander would have been if its flame on its tail was never lit. Also, if you look at the original animations and illustrations of Cubone and Charmander in the early series and the early games, you see the coloration of the body is the same, and even the eye color is the same. I think this theory is a very real part of the Pokemon franchise, one that they didn't point out on purpose, because they wanted you to figure it out. Pokemon has always had a way of slipping in hidden messages and Easter eggs and things that would surprise fans even decades later. But all in all, without a word from Pokemon, This is all just opinion, but what do you think? Do you think Cubone is really just an orphan Charmander? Let me know what you think in the comments, and as always, I appreciate you watching.